Hello everyone, this is Space Café Podcast and I am Marcus. This is the story of a young man who left his homeland to seek not earthly wealth but heavenly treasure. Do not worry, I'm not taking a wrong turn here. The young man I'm talking about has literally left his native country to devote his life in search of a heavenly spectacle.
In French, I guess it's Adrien, but in English, most people call me Adrien.
The Aurora, a cosmic spectacle, has become the center of Adrien Mauduit's life. Today, the Frenchman lives in the Arctic north of Europe and lives a life that he has arranged all for himself.
Yes.
Thank you, Adrien, for stopping by at the Space Café Podcast.
I'm a 33-year-old astrophotographer from France, but I actually haven't lived in France for a while, almost 15 years now. And I've lived in countries like Canada, Denmark, and now I'm in Norway. And before coming to Norway, I was actually, I earned a master's degree in science. I did a bit of teaching science in Denmark, and I found the passion for the aurora watching from Denmark. And that's what brought me to right under the aurora, basically, where I live now in the Arctic.
Wow. So you got stuck, so to say, under the night sky.
That's it.
Fascinating. So if you look at it, now, how far up north are you? Because is there like midnight sun time going on at the moment?
Exactly. So it's hard for people to realize how far north we are. We're in the northernmost big city, more than 50,000 people. It's considered as a big city in Norway anyways, in the world. So we're almost at 70 degrees north. So well within the Arctic Circle, and I think it's about 300 kilometers north of that, the line. So
I mean, like for our international listeners, is this like if you go along that circle around the globe, that brings you to Alaska, I guess?
Yes.
Where else does it get you? Siberia?
It brings you, so it brings you to countries like or areas like Siberia, Greenland, northern Canada, northern Alaska, and believe it or not, in Iceland, you're still not within this circle. A lot of people think it's up there. It's actually below the line, slightly.
Fascinating. So, of course, there's this cliche that this is a freezing cold place. How cold is it?
Yes. It is probably for a lot of people, I think it's majorly cold, but for, I guess, Alaska or Sweden or Siberia, it's even worse. For those standards, I think Norway, because of this, the Gulf Stream influence, being so close to the sea, we actually get a lot of lukewarm masses from the sea, and that warms up just a little bit so that we don't have like extremely freezing temperatures in the winter. We have, think about minus 15, minus 20, which is still, if you ask me, is still cold for us Europeans. But
Adrien, this is such a beautiful story that you're already telling me, that you were following the night sky, and in order to settle down at a place for 15 years, so you originate in France, but of course you were looking for something else with a little bit of more aurora possibility. That's not possible in France. There's quite a bit of light pollution, I guess, in order to watch the night skies. So great. You got quite a bit of a fan base going on YouTube already. So I checked it out today, and you have those beautiful, beautiful aurora videos. So tell me a little bit about how difficult is it to catch them, and can you catch them like all year, every year?
Yeah. So the aurora, I think, in terms of capturing it, it's not that difficult in terms of, because we live in a place where the aurora is omnipresent. It's here virtually every night. If you
every
have
night. Wow.
Yes, if you have a bit of a clear patch in the sky, there's a good chance that you will see at least a little faint strip of aurora in that area. Especially now that we're nearing a period of the solar cycle, which is about 11 years, that helps produce more and more of these auroras. So those are very omnipresent almost every night, but they're most of the time in a very I should say a very quiet form or shape. It's not really moving. It's quite faint to the naked eye. It doesn't have any sort of colors. So to the unaided eye, if you didn't know better, that could look like a cloud or a light pollution or something like that. It's not very powerful. But if you're lucky enough, every once in a while, the aurora brightens up in these phenomena called substorms. And during these, the aurora develops over the whole night sky.
Wow.
And then you need to be ready, and you need knowledge, and you need to know how to operate your camera in the dark.
Wow.
So there comes the technique and the everything that comes from the planning to get these amazing expansions and explosions of colors.
Wow. So explosions of colors. That's an interesting point because so I'm exposing myself now. I've never in my life seen an aurora so far. And the ones I've seen in your videos or in movies or whatnot, they're usually greenish. So are auroras also available in different colors?
So let's put it like this. I always try to explain to people this way. The camera can open its shutter or has a better sensitivity at night, most likely than the naked eye. It has a worse dynamic range, but it has a better night vision, if you will. So the camera almost always sees colors in the aurora, in the Milky Way, and in anything in the landscape at night. Our eyes, however, it's a bit different. They have, in comparison to the camera, they have quite a slow shutter speed, so they cannot take a lot of light. They're actually not that sensitive. So most of the faint objects, including faint aurora or the Milky Way, we're all going to see this in black and white. And since it's the aurora that is the most present in the sky, a lot of people come and see the aurora and they get baffled at the first sight of it because they say, well, where's the color? And
interesting.
Yeah, I always tell them, well, but it can get better. And when it does, when the aurora brightens up, that's exactly when your eyes start picking up the colors. So the green, the pink, the purple, and even sometimes if you're lucky enough, the reds, which are like probably the rarest forms of auroras.
Wow. Let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about where that comes from. So what is an aurora from a scientific perspective? So what are we seeing up there?
Okay, so you can actually see, I always also start by explaining that like this. The aurora is the physical manifestation of the exhaust pipe of the magnetic field of the Earth. It's the end result of that magnetic field in action. And the main actor is actually the sun. So the sun sends at all times a soup of particles and magnetic fields in outer space throughout the solar system. And of course, we're in it. So we receive part of these particles and magnetic field. And when those interact with our magnetic field on Earth, which creates a protection, but it's a very dynamic protection. And the movements of that magnetic field and the penetration of these particles from the sun, that will create the aurora eventually, because our magnetic field catches these particles and channel them towards the poles where we're at. And that the particles are trapped in now our magnetic field. They descend back to our atmosphere where they bump into the molecules and atoms that you and I breathe. right? So oxygen, nitrogen, and those are the main molecules and atoms. And that creates the shock between solar particles and air molecules and atoms creates the glow, the auroral glow that we see as light.
So it's two media bumping into one another. That is. So without our magnetic field, we would be toast. Someone said. So it's quite useful to have it. So it's sort of shielding the Earth and making life possible in the first place, if that is right.
That's correct. So one of the elements that we rarely take into account when, for example, we're going to colonize Mars or we're going to go establish a base on the moon or something like that, is that those have either very weak or no magnetic field at all. And these actually deflect most of the deadly radiation and mostly particles that can interact with the magnetic field out. They just fling them out and protects basically what's inside. So we're on Earth, we're in our little cocoon and protected from all the deadly radiation and particles. So from the magnetic field and the layer of our atmosphere that creates an extra barrier. So we're actually quite, well protected on Earth. And that's why life was possible in the first place.
Magnetic fields save lives. So that would be a cool thing on t-shirts, maybe. So how strong is that radiation that you just mentioned? Is that comparable to like the radiation we have experience with on Earth, that is Chernobyl, for example? Is that comparable?
Yeah. So from space, we receive a whole bunch of different electromagnetic radiation, or EMRs, right? It can be light, it can be microwaves, it can be radio waves, it can be X-rays, gamma rays, all those more or less, energetic radiations. And the magnetic field and the atmosphere, they do a great job at filtering out most of those particles. But every so often, and because of the nature of our atmosphere sometimes, and those radiations, we receive a small dose of these radiations. But again, most of the atmosphere does the job of removing those or deflecting those. So we're pretty much safe on Earth.
Fascinating. So going back to Mars now, you mentioned Mars, colonizing Mars. It would in fact be not such a good idea. That's an interesting point you're making, because we should probably go look for a place with a magnetic field. Or is there a way to create a magnetic field and shield ourselves? Would that be possible? Would that make sense?
Well, I think that's one of the big questions that scientists and engineers try to answer now, as we are on the Mars or race to Mars.
Yeah, it's very popular.
It's very popular. I'm not sure where the state of affairs is right now. If it's at all possible, it might be possible. I don't know better because I'm not a magnetic physicist or something like that. But all I know is that we need to pay attention and give more importance to these things, because one recent event that was overlooked was the launch of you might know about the Starlink satellites that are launched in trays of 60 satellites. And during one of the most recent launches, I can't remember the number of satellites that were actually fried in a solar storm. So those particles coming from the sun, they actually fried some of the satellites that could not get into orbit. And Elon Musk was, of course, and the whole team behind SpaceX were taken, by surprise.
So there's no pre-notice that a solar storm is coming. So this is really bad luck.
It's bad luck, and if you look at all the manned space missions that so far that we've realized or we completed on the moon or out in EVA or stuff like that, all of this was outside of big solar events, big solar storms that could have easily killed these astronauts and these men and women in space. So far we've been pretty lucky, but we're seeing signs of, of these things, and it would be foolish not to pay attention.
Wow. Is it actually understood how that magnetic field comes into existence in the first place? So where does it come from? Because it's like a magnet, the magnet you can buy in your store, are pretty similar. In fact, the same effect. But this is a huge thing going on Earth. So where does it come from?
So it comes from the what we call the dynamo effect of Earth. The solid core sort of rotating into a less solid mantle. And that the difference between the fact that it's also magnetized and the fact that it has a movement and it rotates, it creates this dynamo effect, which in turn creates the magnetic field around the Earth. A very powerful one. Wow.
So there's a magnetic field around the dynamo on my bicycle.
Yes.
So you could measure that.
Oh, you could. If you have anything that works nowadays, every sort of motor that works, I would say every sort of motor, there's a chance that it works with magnetism, like electromagnets. If you open a computer, if you open an elevator box or something, they will all work with coils of wires and electric fields and magnetic fields. That's just the way it works.
And although in a very weak environment, it would deflect radiation from wherever. Also, my dynamo on my bicycle.
No, so there are different orders of power, I think, that, or scales of power. It's not as easy as saying, this could protect that, and
sure,
it needs to be like very, very strong.
Of course,
I think it's measured in the unit is called it's called Tesla, and it's the power of a magnetic field. We can record actually those variations of our own fields in nanoteslas on Earth, but out in space, that's much.
What do you mean by
much more powerful?
What do you mean by our own fields, like the electrical gadgets we're using?
So, we can actually measure. Actually, the what helps us measure what we call the geomagnetic activity, which is basically at any time the state of our magnetic field is what we call magnetometers, and those are essentially magnets that are put in the X, Y, and Z directions or axes. And these magnets, they record the variations of in 3D, right? The movement, the oscillations of that field. For example, as particles from the sun, remember, they're now caught in the magnetic field of the Earth. As they we call it precipitate, but as they descend, quote unquote, descend back to Earth, they make the magnetic line wiggle like this. And this wiggling, this displacement can be measured on Earth. And this is what we measure when, there's aurora coming or there's particles coming, creating aurora, and that makes a wiggle, and we can measure it in those oscillations of a magnetometer. Awesome. So it's very cool.
Awesome. Adrien, what kind of education did you need to get in order to build up your knowledge base for what we're discussing right now and to become an astrophotographer?
So astrophotography, I really picked up from scratch because I literally knew nothing about astrophotography when I picked it up back in Denmark, actually because of Aurora. So I watched a lot of tutorials on YouTube. I read a few books from people that I really look up to now, and or back then and still now I do. And all the knowledge that I have from I would say we call it space weather, but I would say aurora science in general, comes from different sources. Also, a lot of videos on YouTube, NASA resources, scientific articles, and also some scientists that I follow and I support on a yearly basis. One of them is Dr. Tamitha Skov, and she's absolutely amazing because she really wants to connect the general public with space weather and aurora science, and she does an amazing job at that. She makes free aurora forecast videos on YouTube, free mini courses about space weather, and you can learn a great deal from her. So I draw a lot of these a lot of the things that I'm talking to you about today actually come from her knowledge and passion. So lots of great people in this field, to be honest. It's not only her, but there's a whole team behind. But it's still a science in its infancy. So it's hard for me, of course. I'm not at a level where I'm not at the scientist level, but I'm a bit more than the amateur level, I would say. So I could answer a few questions, but I can never go into too many details, if I would say.
I like that approach. This is school of life, so to say. So you found your passion, you found your vocation, and you sucked up all the information you could get. I mean, like, this is the dream. This is the ideal way of educating oneself, I guess. So
exactly.
How far back do you have to go to find that moment when you knew this was going to be something that you're interested in?
Well, back then in 2015, when I saw my first aurora on the beach in Denmark, I didn't know what to expect, to be honest, because one of my colleagues at the school I was teaching at in Denmark was the cadet teacher. So he used to spend a lot of nights outside, and he told me, well, tonight you might be able to see the aurora, because we were talking about aurora around the teacher's lounge. And he said, yeah, I see aurora very often. You should go outside tonight. Tonight should be a good night. So I was like, no, there's no way I'm going to see aurora. I mean, I'm not in Iceland or Canada or, when we think aurora, we think very far north locations. So I go to the beach that night and I wait for 1, 2, 3, 4 hours. Actually, not too far away from Germany, if you think about it in terms of latitude. And at some point, I just get too tired. So I go back to the car. And as I walk back to the car, the tree line that was in front of me illuminated completely. I was like, what is that? So I turned back. And in the split second that I turned back, that can't be the moon. There's no moon. That could be a boat, because that's the ocean, right? Or the sea. So I turned back and I see that this curtain of dancing pillars on the horizon that cast so much light that I could almost see a shadow on the ground. And I think that's the single moment that defined the passion for me for the aurora, because I mean I love nature and I love space. I love the night sky, but it really changed my vision on how powerful and how amazing our planet is. That something so beautiful and unexpected could happen in real life. Because, you hear it in tales and sometimes you see it in documentaries, but it's something else. You see it in real life. So that became my passion. And I think I've only realized just a few, I would say, years ago, if not a year ago, I would say, that I would, the aurora would just be present in my whole life, would just dictate what I do for a living. I sleep aurora, I breathe aurora, I do a lot of aurora things, so I just love it.
Fascinating. What I love about, I completely understand the passion, because I have a similar sensation of being awed watching that night sky or watching a beautiful mountain ridge or whatnot, and just imagining or realizing that this is out there irrespective of myself. Nature just doesn't care if I'm here or not. Nature is playing those beautiful games irrespective of my existence, and it doesn't need me. And this gives me the chills still, because this is something that's grander than the collective number of humanity on this planet. And maybe this is also something that comes a little close to what you're experiencing.
I think you're right. It does remind you of how, you look at the Milky Way or the stars, and I could stare, for example, for hours, because I can give perspective to that. Like all the, some of the stars are closer to us, some of the milk in that Milky Way. So you start seeing this in 3D, and you can start seeing the galaxy and then other galaxies. And now your whole world is completely upside down, and you start asking yourself a lot of questions. But I think the aurora is the connection between us on Earth and outer space. It really is. And when you look at the aurora it's even better with clouds, in my opinion, with a few clouds, because it really gives you an idea of how close, but still very far away the aurora is from you. And I think, as you mentioned, it just shatters your whole conception again. It just, you start asking yourself a lot of questions about yourself, about us as humankind, as, the humanity, the planet itself. And I won't go as far as saying it's like a trip to space, because nothing can replace that, obviously. But it's getting close, in my opinion, getting this type of experience.
Would you prefer going to space if you were asked?
So. Yes.
So no second thoughts?
No, I don't think what could be even better is to experience the aurora from space. that would even be like the cherry on top. But
where is that aurora located? So is it, and how big is it? So is this like the outer atmosphere, or what kind of sphere on that onion-shaped outer layers that we have around our planet? Where is it?
I actually love that you use the onion as a metaphor, because I use it a lot to explain to people the magnetic field, which is almost like you slice an onion in two, and then you see the different layers. But the atmosphere is too. And okay, so let's put it this way: if you take a plane, right? If you fly in a plane, you can't go higher than, I'm gonna count in kilometers, because let's just say it's like the international unit.
Yeah.
My American friends will definitely kill me, but let's just say kilometers. So 10 kilometers is as high as you will fly with like commercial flights, right? When you're there, 10 kilometers, you need to travel 8 times to start, or 8 times the same distance in terms of altitude.
Wow.
To be at the lower edge of the aurora. So the aurora happens at the lowest at 80 kilometers, which is the mesosphere, and continues all the way up within the satellite range. Actually, a lot of the satellites, believe it or not, fly through the aurora, at least the last part of the aurora. So it can extend up to 5, sometimes we think 600 kilometers up in the exosphere or thermosphere.
The International Space Station is at 400 kilometers, or
about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So most of the time, from the ISS, when the astronauts take pictures of the aurora, they would actually be in the last tier of the aurora. But the glow from that aurora is so faint. The particles are so scarce that it doesn't produce a lot of light. And it looks like they don't actually fly into any kind of aurora, but they actually might in some when the precipitation is quite heavy, they might actually fly through the aurora.
Wow. Would they see it if they looked out of their windows?
Oh, yes. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Beautiful. Adrien, what does a day in your life look like? A typical day.
Ooh. So I do a lot of different things as an astrophotographer, which actually represents just a small part of what I do. I do as a freelancer, I do a whole bunch of services and stuff. So I would, of course, do a bit of guiding during the Aurora season, private tours.
Mm-hmm.
I do webinars and seminars about the Aurora. I teach a few people, so amateurs, but also photographers and also guides. I teach a few guides because some of the guides are not that well informed about the Aurora, especially seasonal workers. But actually, most of my time I spend taking footage and sequences of anything that happens at night. So that can be Aurora, of course, but that can be life at night in all its splendor. So that can be, I don't know, bioluminescence under the Milky Way, turtles on the beach, anything that happens at night. So I really specialize in not only photography, but also extreme low light filming.
So when do you get up usually? Because I guess if you're a night person, there's no early morning for you.
No, so morning is when I sleep most of the time. I'm a night owl, and when I'm on the job, I actually go all night, and I actually go to bed in the morning and sleep, during the day.
Wow.
So I do these things, produce these sequences, which ultimately end up, being picked up by production companies, which use those as transitions or actual footage, B-roll footage in documentaries. So I've come to a point of my career where I've been featured in, I don't know if that's the right word, but my work has been licensed several times in quite big productions, and one is in the making, which will be, I can't wait to talk about it because I just can't right now, but I can't wait. And then a lot of my time, I actually, edit on the computer. I also do some citizen science work on the side, which most of it is not paid, so it's off of my free time. So I do have a foot in Project Possum, which is a project that studies the mesosphere and oxygen clouds. I also do a bit of, not really research, but in the field of Aurora, I do help a little bit in some quote unquote projects.
All right.
So
what
this is basically what I do.
Is it that Project Possum, like, what kind of citizen science do you do here?
So I actually have not done too much in the past years because of COVID and everyone was at home. So I didn't have that much to offer. But back in 2017 and 2018, I was helping them. Okay, so the goal of Project Possum is to ultimately send citizen astronauts or astronaut candidates who are citizens. So the project trains citizens to be astronaut candidates.
Wow.
Who will ultimately and hopefully fly on one of the spacecrafts to do suborbital flights. So it's not orbital flights where you stay in orbit. It's just doing a parabola, so going up to the upper atmosphere, staying there for I don't know how much time, but not that long, and then take samples, take photos of the atmosphere, and then going back.
Okay.
And the project actually specializes on a very peculiar phenomenon, which is called noctilucent clouds, which translates to night shining clouds.
Wow.
And you can actually observe them right now from Germany or from Northern Europe and the Northern Hemisphere. It's very high clouds of ice that reflects the sunlight when you're in the shadow of the Earth. So it needs to be at twilight, right? Look towards the north, and you might see these shiny tendrils on the northern horizon. Sometimes they're quite, impressive. And we think they might be our only window at visualizing climate change, which is, could be quite big, because climate change, that's not something that you and I can see, right?
Mm-hmm.
At least on a daily basis. But these clouds are actually something we can see in the night sky. And there seems to be a trend which we try to show that has been increasing over the years. And we're trying to show that.
So like what is increasing here? So what could be a reference to climate change?
So yeah, let me specify this because that was a bit unclear, I think. So noctilucent clouds are ice particles, but they're some of the processes, at least as we understand those right now in literature, is they're being created by water vapor that comes from mostly methane, the combination of methane and CO2. And as you know, methane and CO2 are two of the greenhouse gases that, not good. So logically, if CO2 and methane would increase, right, you would potentially see an increase in those noctilucent clouds. And this is what we're trying to see by quantifying each year, the number of reports by citizens.
Wow.
So we use Facebook groups, we use hopefully soon we're going to use an app that we're creating right now with a vet, actually, that can easily collect these data in bulk and help us see if, yes, there is a trend in the number of reports of these clouds.
Cool. So how can I help?
If you can be a beta tester for the app, I would love it when the app is ready. So hopefully the app will be ready by December. And by next season, because these clouds only happen in the summer in the respective hemispheres. So by next summer, we're going to need some people to test the apps and maybe go out there 1 or 2 nights and see if they can catch these beautiful clouds. That would greatly help us, quantify. We don't really receive anything from this. It was part of a grant, but the whole project as it stands now will be run by us almost on our free time. So
sure.
That would be lovely if citizens like you and some of my friends, they could help in any way. That would be just brilliant.
Beautiful. Adrien, we haven't talked about the core business of yours. We haven't talked about astrophotography at all, almost. So let's dive into that. How difficult is it to take photos at night?
Oh, yeah, that's a vast and wide question. Let's just say, of course, it depends on where you shoot in the world
and your gear.
Well, how hard, always comes down to different factors. And one of the first I always think about is, where do you shoot in the world? Because the fact that it is at night obviously adds a level of, how should I put it, difficulty in terms of, how dangerous and hazardous a place is. Is it safe in terms of wildlife, population, crime, stuff like that. Things that you wouldn't even think about necessarily during the day.
Have you experienced anything of these?
Yes, actually more with wildlife than people, to be quite honest. Because I remember I was doing a charity trip in Denmark with the school I was teaching at. And I took my camera with us, or with me, even though it was not really recommended, but I did it anyway. I took my cheapest camera with me, and I really wanted to capture the Milky Way from Africa. And I came face to face with wild dogs and hyenas in the bush.
Not good.
So, especially after they had told us in that village that there had been accidents with hyenas.
Wow.
So that was the most scary. I was scared to death, like seeing these big yellow eyes in the bush.
Wow.
Fortunately, I was very close to the door, so I just went back inside very quickly. But
and so you decided to go to Norway and stay put in Norway.
Yeah, at least the most dangerous animal here is actually the moose.
Yes.
So there you go.
Right. Okay, so you gotta make sure you're in a safe spot then you have your very expensive gear. By the way, I have a Generation 8 GoPro, and I tried my luck with a little bit of nighttime shooting, very layperson's attempt, on a beach in Croatia last year.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really fascinating because it produced very nice imagery for my very layperson's ability from the Milky Way already. So that was really, really cool to see. So I was very happy with it already.
Yeah, actually, I would say basic astrophotography is actually not too hard. You don't need fancy equipment or fancy cameras. And actually, I would go as far as saying the fanciest cameras on the market right now are not the best at astrophotography, because the more pixels you have on your sensor, photoreceptors, the smaller they are, and the worse they are at collecting light. So they will produce a lot of noise. So ideally, you want a sensor that's big, so a full frame sensor with not a lot of pixels, but big ones. So my camera that I use for filming at night only has 12 megapixels, which by today's standards is quite low. But for night photography, it's perfect. So I would say, try with your gear and see what you get. And already if you have a pretty sturdy tripod, which is, because you're going to have your camera open for or shutter open for several seconds. You have to at night. That's just the way it is to capture the light. And then you're going to be able to see the Milky Way.
Wow.
And when you get, I'm pretty sure you had that wow.
This was totally wow. So I went to my kids, I went to my wife and was like, look, the Milky Way. That was crazy. So maybe we should pass on that baton of inspiration to our listeners. Now, so what do you need to get a rudimentary image of the Milky Way right now? Would a smartphone and a small tripod work?
Actually, a lot of smartphones now can take pictures of the night sky. I think it's for a lot of smartphones, it's the night mode, or I think it is for the iPhone. But I know the Samsung Galaxy can, the OnePlus can, iPhones now, the iPhone 13 definitely can. So these smartphones can definitely take Milky Way pictures. So you need the tripod and set the settings to several seconds of exposure, high ISO, and minimum aperture. So that F number that you see, you want it as low as possible.
Okay, and go look for a place without artificial light. I think this is critical.
It is critical, and that's good that you bring this up, because light pollution plays a big role in washing up the Milky Way in your night sky. And unfortunately, in Europe, we have a lot of places now in Germany, the Netherlands, France, Spain, that have a lot of light pollution. And it's not very easy for people to just drive 3 hours in the middle of nowhere to find those clear skies. But if you can have access to that, definitely try and do that.
Great. Is there like a Google Maps for night for space watchers out there where I can go look for dark places?
Exactly. There exists a few websites that you can use, but the one I think a lot of people use is called lightpollutionmap.com.
Okay, makes sense.
That is that easy. And when you open the map, you can, with a color code, you can automatically see what color your area is. And that will help you sort of determine, where to go.
Let me check that out right now. Light pollution map.com. All right. So let me check, because I feel like I'm in a good place.
You might be surprised, actually.
So search places. Now, I'm going to look for my own place. Damn it. I thought it's darker.
That's right.
So it's quite heavily polluted. Still, I live in the forest, so to say. So I thought it's dark, but the there's a bunch of darker places. So I would have to travel for about 10 kilometers to have it like really dark. So
perfect.
Everyone, go to that map and go check it out. This is really worth it. And then fire up your smartphone and shutter, and the settings are usually auto settings.
No, so you wouldn't want auto settings for that. You really want to adjust the settings as you go. So I would advise you to put the ISO value on the highest that you can go.
Mm-hmm.
And the shutter speed, you want at least, I would say, 10 seconds to get, fine details in the Milky Way.
Okay.
And then you're going to start, seeing these nice colors and details.
Beautiful. Thank you for that pro tip.
No worries.
Good. Adrien, let's walk through one of your Aurora shoots. What was the most fascinating one? And could you walk us through that one?
All right. So I'm going to take the example of this year's one of, I think that was definitely my top 3 Aurora nights of all time. That was actually in Sweden, because that was a night where the auroral activity was quite high. And when it's the case, the aurora leaves us in the north and it actually migrates further south. It might come back to the north, but most of the time it will be based further south, a few hundred kilometers at least. So I traveled to Swedish Lapland to experience that. And it was minus 30 something. It was really cold. But
at some point you have to leave the car.
That's it. At some point you have to leave the car. And when you see the frost creeping up on the car windows, it's going to be a good night. So everything, it was really, really cold. And that was the kind of cold that really gets to your lungs and starts, you're having like difficulties breathing and everything, and you see crystals forming on your mustache and beard and hair. So, but when you enter this forest, which is extremely close to the road, actually the road is in the forest, so we didn't have to snowshoe that far. But we did anyway. I think we went up like a kilometer or something into the forest not to have any cars, and just walking through this almost enchanted forest, with big pine trees that crack under the frost, with the moon that's reflecting on the small eye crystals in the spruce or the pine trees needles. Everything looks so pristine, untouched. There's not a sound, just you and your snowshoes. You're just yourself there, and you take it all in. It's just an indescribable feeling. And then when the aurora shows up, it's just the cherry on top. It's just something that's taken out of a fairy tale. When you watch the cartoon Frozen, I think they pictured it really well in that movie. And maybe if you have kids, you might have watched this movie. Yes. And
not just once.
Not just once, right? I think they really did a great job at capturing the atmosphere of these, it's something that feels almost magical, almost too good to be true. It's just unbelievable and indescribable. I could spend hours just talking about this walk in the forest, describing all the single moments, but it's just absolutely stunning.
You know what?
And then when
what's funny? You have many videos on your channel, and I was going through some of those videos, and I was clicking on just that one that you were describing right now, for whatever reason. So what a lucky coincidence. And I'm from an alpine region in Europe, so I know by the sound of snow how cold it is, and it sounded really, really cold. But the steps of your boots in that snow, that made a very clear indication that this is deep winter. But it's beautiful. So everyone, if you listen to this right now, please fire up YouTube and go to go to your website. So that website is called again Night Lights Films, right? Yes,
Correct.
And that very video we were just looking at is called A Night Hike Through the Swedish Lapland Borealis Forest.
That's a bit of an extensive title, but
how long does such a shoot take?
So I was there all night, and
with your coffee mug.
Yeah. So shooting in under these conditions, also because I'm using filming gear, so it's not only tripods and heavy tripods, but also I use like a ramp to have camera motion, and I carry with me 4 cameras with all the lenses. So
I mean, like, don't your batteries break down under those circumstances?
So I usually, yes, like your typical camera battery that you get with the camera would not last for 30 minutes and it would already be dead. So I carry with me these big batteries that go that I mount on a rig with the camera, and they just last for hours. Even within minus 40, minus 50, they just work. But yeah, shooting in these conditions, you also need to think about the crystals depositing on the glass. So you need to warm up your lens. So you also need the lens warmers. You need warmers for yourself. So you were mentioning a big coffee mug.
Yeah.
So I always bring tons of tea and coffee, warm clothing, extra layers, warm base layers, and lots of food, more than I need. But sometimes it just makes the difference between you being comfortable and you being on the edge of not comfortable. So, you really want to put safety and on your side, and
beautiful.
I realize it's not for everyone, because throughout the years I just meet so many tourists, and you have the people that can withstand minus 15, minus 20, but when you come to minus 30 and below that,
that's a threshold.
I feel like a lot of people would not even go out of the car.
Nice. Wonderful. Adrien, what's up next in Adrien Land? What are your plans?
All right. So I just finished a very important shoot that I need to keep a secret for now, but hopefully next year I'll be able to talk about it, because it will be released globally. So I'll be more than happy to talk about it. But in the future, so for next season, I think I'm going to continue some guiding and some seminars and workshops. And I have a few shoots coming up, but I just keep on trying to push the limits of filming at night and what's possible with the technology that we have today, and hopefully observe and record some behaviors of animals and stuff and phenomena that we have rarely captured before.
How can people get in touch with you, or stay in touch, or watch your work, or connect with you?
All right, so I have a lot of different channels they can contact and stay in touch with me. So I do hold it's called Buy Me a Coffee. So it's for those who want to support my work. It's like it's a platform like Patreon, if you know, on YouTube. You can support me by buying me coffee or by being a member. Then you can follow my work, but on a daily basis, I post on social media. So if you just want to look at my work and see what I do, I post daily videos and photos on Twitter, YouTube. Well, not YouTube daily, but YouTube. I have a big Facebook page as well. Instagram, although I'm not using Instagram that much. Otherwise, they can contact me through my website, by email. Good. I have so many things.
So no excuses here.
There you
go. Wonderful. I'm hearing some maybe noise from the street outside. So just out of curiosity, it's evening. We're recording this right now. It's almost 8:00 Central European time. Is there midnight sun time at your place right now? So does the sun ever set?
No.
No.
You're right. It doesn't. So this was a plane out my window.
Okay.
And right now the sun is partially shining, and it will not set at all for until August.
Wow. Wow. So how do you get used to that? I mean, like, do you use blindfolds to catch some sleep? Well, you don't sleep at night anyways. You mentioned.
Well, during the summer, I sleep more at night. But actually, the light that we get during the midnight sun is it's golden light. It's almost like golden hour for at least 4 hours, 5 hours a night. So I really sometimes want to take advantage of that. But what we do here in the north is that most people have these very thick blinders that they have on the windows. I personally have a triple curtain that helps me eliminate any sort of light because being a French guy, I was brought up with, when I sleep at night, I just can't stand any light. So I have like fully dark and that's it.
Nice. Adrien, at the end of our show, we have a fun tradition, and that is that you're sharing something with me, with the audience, that you feel could be an inspiration. So why don't you share something off the top of your head you feel like could be an inspiration for our audience?
All right. So I would say that, and I think that's why I really got passionate about astrophotography and the night sky. If you feel like you're in a bad place, physically or mentally, whether comes from your family, comes from yourself, your friends, take a minute to get outside, especially this summer, and especially if you have access to a night sky outside of city bounds. But even if you're within a city, trust me, it does help to sit in the dark and look up at the night sky for a few minutes. Just clear your mind. Don't think about anything else. Just open your eyes wide open, look up at the stars, and stay there. Try to float there. And I think that is meditation for the soul, because that's really what helped me personally through a few dark periods of my life. And every time, I have a difficulty, or, a member of my family is not feeling well, or I'm not feeling well. I mean, hell, I've been I'm still going through long COVID since 2020. And when something is bad, I always go back to the night sky because it inspires me so much. And it really, everything goes away when you look at the night sky. And I wish people spent a bit more time, slow down the pace of everyday life and just take a minute to contemplate, who we are as a species and how we can interact with one another in a better way, and how we can protect the Earth, this little tiny dot. This is what we're talking about. The pale blue dot, right? Of course, most of us will not have access to space. And that's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. So we won't be able to see the Earth as this tiny little pale blue dot that we need to protect. And so the night sky to me is just salvation, because although we cannot have this bird eye view on the planet, it still reminds you that there's a whole universe out there, that we're not alone. And that's for sure. So that, that's a very simple tip or kind of inspiration tip that I could give, and quite, cheesy, I would say, but it's one that has definitely helped me through a few dark periods of my life. So if that can help someone, then just do it.
Wonderful. Adrien Mauduit, thank you so much for taking that time. That was a beautiful hour we just spent with one another. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening, everyone. We should all live our lives for what we really enjoy, right? And I promise we won't be still until we get everyone on board with this here at the Space Café Podcast. thank you for your time today. Do not forget SpaceWatch.Global and Space Café Radios, your weekly must-haves and must-attends. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.